I think we'll go ahead and start because we don't have that much time, but I want to welcome everyone again. Hello, my name is Darlene Holmes, and I am the Program Director for Strategic Partnerships at National League of Cities. And we're super excited today. We are celebrating 100 years at the National League of Cities and very excited to continue the work that we do to help cities and leaders and communities with the challenges they face daily. Homelessness is a major concern for our cities, and today we are proud to have our strategic partnership with Pallet to discuss the interdepartmental city strategies to end unsheltered homelessness. I would love to introduce the CEO of Pallet, Amy King.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Darlene. It's great to be here with you all, and thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited about this discussion today that will highlight the work of two awesome cities in the Southwest who are really tackling the homelessness crisis with the speed and urgency that it deserves. Those two cities are the city of Denver and the city of Santa Fe, New Mexico. Both of these cities are unique because of their comprehensive approach to addressing homelessness and supporting those that are unhoused through the unification of their internal city departments. So we're going to talk a little bit about what those strategies look like, and then you're going to hear from folks from those cities. So we're going to kick off the webinar with a little bit of a brief presentation to kind of walk you through what the strategies were in those two cities, the role that Pallet got to play with them, and then we'll meet some awesome folks that I'm excited to introduce you to. So to get you started, to give you a little bit of background on Pallet, who we are and what we do. Pallet is a public benefit corporation based in the US. We are a certified living wage employer, and we are unique in that we have a dual mission. So we are first and foremost a workforce development organization. More than 70% of our staff are folks who have personally experienced homelessness, had interaction with the justice system, and or are recovering from some sort of addiction. Their lived experience and their interaction with us helps us to design, build, and deploy really awesome shelter systems that help to address human displacement that can result from domestic homelessness, from natural disasters, or surges of population resulting from new arrivals, things like that. So our goal is to really build up the workforce that we need through the provision of our workforce programming, those construction and manufacturing workers that will build the permanent housing supply that's required to end this crisis indefinitely. But in the interim, we have these cool panelized shelter systems that can be assembled on site in about an hour. And they've been designed by our staff, so they're meant to provide a humane and dignified solution that really drives people towards rehabilitation and self-sufficiency. So that's what we're moving towards here. To give you a quick concept of the shelters themselves, they're made of a non-organic material that's mold, mildew, and rot resistant, sets up in an hour, as I mentioned, and can withstand extreme heat, extreme cold, Category 5 winds, and other climate impacts. So really meant to go anywhere. We have deployed these units over 125 sites across the United States and Canada in partnership with 86 cities, 25 states, and 70 distinct service providers. So we've had the privilege of meeting thousands of people across North America who are doing this awesome work, and excited to highlight a couple more of those today. So to give you an idea about what's happened in these two cities that we're going to highlight, you might be familiar with what's gone on in Denver. So a new mayor took over last year in July. Mayor Johnston. On July 18th, 2023, he focused on establishing a clearly defined and common goal, which was to bring 1,000 Denverites previously living in encampments indoors by December 31st. So a really aggressive 6-month strategy. A year later now, this has evolved into a much more larger comprehensive plan, now known as the All-In Mile High Initiative. The initial phase, which we'll talk a little bit about today, was centered on deploying an encampment resolution program that had a 6-pronged strategy. So quickly, I'll run you through what that looked like. First, they did place-based approach to resolve encampments through housing. So the goal was to get as many people into housing or shelter as possible. They added units quickly and cost-effectively. They provided dignified transitional housing with wraparound support services on site and a clear path to permanent housing. This is part of the role that Pallet got to play, and we were honored to participate with them. We'll talk about that more in a moment. And then one really key piece, the 4th prong of this approach, was an emergency management response to addressing homelessness. At Pallet, we believe homelessness is a disaster and should be treated as such. And so really what the city of Denver did, and many other cities have done as well, is to declare a state of emergency and gather all their interagency departments together to create a more cohesive and rapid response. So in this case, they established an interagency effort through the Denver Emergency Operations Center. I was able to go and see this center myself. It was awesome. They had everybody in the room that they needed to move quickly, which was fantastic. And that later transitioned into the Homelessness Resolution Operations Center. The structure broke down the work silos and convened all the key leaders that were needed across city agencies, including emergency management, housing stability, community planning and development, transportation and infrastructure, public health and environment, parks and rec, police department, technology services, finance, and more. So every city department that was needed to really make this fly was present in the room. The mayor also appointed 10 full-time staff members to drive the initiative forward and unify around this collective solution. So everybody met every day. They had access to construction and permitting, to land use, to encampment outreach, service delivery, finance data, everyone that they needed all in one room so that they could really move quickly. And then the next key component to this strategy was to permanently close encampments and keep them closed. And we'll talk about the outcomes from that in a second. And then finally, there was a really big key component of community engagement and adoption, which I'm sure many of you recognize is a very key piece to success for these strategies. This was really critical to the city's success as they launched a very aggressive strategy that had an aggressive public information campaign. They hosted more than 60 community meetings to educate Denverites about the initiative and to deeply engage community members, which included unsheltered people and their neighbors every step of the way. So today, exactly 1 year since the emergency declaration announcement in Denver, the numbers and their success really speak for themselves. 1,673 people have moved into dignified emergency shelter and housing with supportive services. 84% of those individuals are still inside today, and a remarkable 583 people are now in permanent housing. Denver was able to resolve 16 encampments in a dignified way, increasing non-congregate capacity by 250% and creating over 1,200 units across 8 council districts. So this spread the distribution of responsibility for shelter across the city, so no one neighborhood was holding most of the services. They've seen a reduction in city 311 and 911 calls in their wider community benefits, and their PIT count decreases have been remarkable as well. An 83% reduction in unsheltered family homelessness, a 23% reduction in tent and vehicular homelessness, and their total population of unsheltered homelessness fell by 11%. So really awesome success in Denver as a result of this initiative. To give you an idea of the role that we at Palette were honored to play, we were able to partner with them to build a micro community that you can see on this slide. This is one of many options that the city of Denver deployed, and we want to be clear that this is one tool in a toolbox of resources to help address unsheltered homelessness. The Stay-In micro community features 54 pallet shelters that serve individuals who are currently chronically homeless or experiencing chronic homelessness. These non-congregate cabins are equipped with a bed, personal climate control, storage space, and a lockable door that gives people peace of mind for a good night's sleep, knowing that their belongings are safe and that they can leave their shelter at any time to go apply for jobs, access healthcare, and connect to services. So we were able to move more than 50 people inside and keep them safe from the cold exactly on New Year's Day, marking the successful fulfillment of Mayor Johnston's House 1,000 initiative. So we were very excited to play that important role. This village is operated by an awesome service provider who we love called Bayard Enterprises, and I'll be introducing you to 2 lovely ladies from that organization in a moment. This is a nonprofit that highlights lived experience workforce and peer programming. They offer 24/7 monitoring services on site and workforce development programming for their residents. So we're so lucky to have 2 lovely ladies here to help us learn more and dive deeper into the types of programming that they're providing there. Now we'll talk a little bit about the city of Santa Fe. So in Santa Fe, New Mexico, they have grounded their response to homelessness using the Built for Zero framework, where homelessness is rare and brief. They also operate under the statewide 100% New Mexico initiative. Using the framework of the social determinants of health, this initiative ensures that all families can access the 10 vital services for surviving and thriving. And they've embarked on creative partnerships with churches, philanthropy, nonprofits, and their own emergency management department as well, in utilizing both public publicly and privately held, underutilized, or available land to expand shelter and housing capacity. So some great creativity and leveraging local resource to save cost and get more people inside. Some of these groups include local volunteers and neighbors, in addition to the S3, the Santa Fe Housing Initiative, a collaborative effort between local government and philanthropic organizations, including Anchorum Health Foundation, Santa Fe Community Foundation, Thornburg Foundation, the City of Santa Fe County, and the New Mexico Coalition to End Homelessness, as well as the Annie E. Casey Foundation. So lots of great collaboration, which we love to see, and we know that it takes everybody to help resolve this crisis that we have in front of us. So as part of the city's Built for Zero model for addressing homelessness, they embarked on a mission to build a non-congregate scattered site called Safe Outdoor Spaces in partnership with their local faith-based groups. This resulted in this pilot program, which you see here, in which the city purchased pallet shelters and partnered with the local Lutheran church to repurpose their parking lot to host a 10-shelter village. This outdoor safe space is built on a trauma-informed approach, with pallet shelters designed to offer a safe and secure environment for individuals in need of prioritizing their well-being and dignity of each resident. So they've funded a contract with the LifeLink to be the site operator, providing vital case management, behavioral health, employment, and hygiene services. So really great site that we're honored to be a part of as well. So now we're going to move into our panel discussion. We've got some great folks here that we're excited to introduce you to. I'll introduce them briefly, and then we'll get right into it. So the first person I'd love to introduce you to is Kristen Woods. She is the City of Santa Fe's Youth and Family Services Program Manager. Kristen grew up in Santa Fe and is honored to be working for the city to lead homeless solutions. She received her BA in Environmental Planning and Design from the University of New Mexico School of Architecture and Planning. So welcome, Kristen. You can turn your camera on when you're ready. Next, we have Diane. Hi, Kristen. Next, we have Diane O'Neill, Program Manager for Bayard Enterprises in the city of Denver. After 20 years in the restaurant industry, including several years in management and operating her own catering business, the COVID-19 pandemic prompted Diane to reassess her career path and pivot to the nonprofit sector. This led her to Bayard Enterprises, where she worked as the first housing navigator for the city of Denver's stay-in micro-community and now serves as the site's programs manager. So welcome, Diane. You can turn your camera on when you're ready. And finally, we're joined by Cherish LeBranch. She is the project manager for Bayard Industries. Cherish began her journey in homelessness services at a local women's shelter 4 years ago. She soon found her way to Bayard Enterprises, where she has worked to provide warmth and refuge to those that are unhoused and encourages them to become the best version of themselves. Cherish now oversees the daily operations of Stay-In Micro-Community and pours every ounce of her energy and love into making it a safe haven for those in need. So welcome, Cherish. You can turn your camera on. Great to see you. All right, so I'm going to kick us off with some questions. I want to encourage you, participants, audience members, please feel free if you have questions for us. We're going to, in a few minutes, in about 30 minutes, transition to Q&A from all of you. So if you have a question, please make sure you drop it in the Q&A portion. We'll be monitoring those and make sure to get to as many of them as we possibly can. But for our first question here right now, we are going to have each person, we'll start with you, Kristen, tell us what your organization does to create pathways to stability for those that are unhoused. And if I missed anything, Kristen, about what Santa Fe is doing, please fill in any gaps there. Feel free. So we'll start with you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that was a great summary. Thank you so much, Amy. Thank you for having me today. It's quite an honor to be here to talk about this work. So as a city organization, one thing that we do is we do partner with different organizations around town and nonprofits to support them in providing their work through a number of different ways. And we also are able to partner with organizations and be part of some coalitions that are addressing this work, such as the S3 group that you mentioned. And that's a great partnership between the city, the county, and then foundations and organizations that are interested in addressing homelessness. So that's a really great partnership that we've been able to find that has helped us to find some really great solutions so far. And I also attend lots of different meetings around the community to try to stay in touch about what's going on. We have a really excellent volunteer network that also is under the name of S3, but it's a volunteer group. And so they are really active in working on volunteering and thinking about solutions to homelessness in our community as well. So we definitely listen to them and want to be part of those conversations. Other ways we create pathways are, we have been able to help during COVID. Part of our response to the unsheltered crisis during that time was to put people in non-congregate forms. So we were able to do mass releases on some hotels, but we were also able to take a former dormitory that was under the city's possession from a former college and turn that into a non-congregate shelter. And that has been hugely successful and continues to be in operation to this day. The building is a little bit in need of repair, so we are looking at other options for where to house that program, but it was a really great first foray into looking at non-congregate solutions in our community, and that was really inspiring, and has been really successful in helping people to access social services, case management, and navigation into permanent housing options. And that's really what inspired us to then move towards looking at safe outdoor spaces as a more dynamic solution to the housing crisis that we're looking at in our community. So we've been really excited about our first ever safe outdoor space, and that you give a great summary, Amy, of how well it's been. Since it's our first project, it's a pilot project for us, and we've been finding a lot of really great successes there. So far, since it's been open, 50% of its residents continue to be there since it opened earlier this year. And so we find that to be a huge success.
Yeah.
And then I also just wanted to say that our partner organization, the operator for the safe outdoor space, is the one that provides all the social services there. They are the operator, and they also are the ones who prioritize and do the intake for the housing itself. And I'm sure there will be lots of other pieces of information there, but that's all I have for now. Thank you so much.
That's great. Awesome. Thank you, Kristen. That's super helpful. Cherish, I'd love to jump to you. Talk us through a little bit about what Bayot is doing to drive pathways to stability for folks that you're serving in the community that you work in.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. So Bayad helps create those pathways through employment. We do have a temp service, so we have hired several of our residents to work for the temp service. We also do a day works program where residents can come in and work for the day, and we pay them cash. We have tons of resources. I tell our residents when they come in, you have more resources than you ever had. Utilize them. Our case management team is amazing. They have helped so many amazing humans better themselves in just a short period that we have been open. Our staff also has tons of empathy and compassion. And then we also do ongoing training with them. And then they have a clean environment and they feel safe, I think is big ones too. They have a locked door, they feel safe, their stuff is safe, and they feel like they can talk to people when they need to talk to somebody.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you, Cherish. And I love the focus on the workforce piece. I think that's such an important part of people regaining independence, making good use of their time, feeling like they're contributing something. I think that's wonderful that you guys have included that in your mission. Diane, I'd love to jump to you now, have you answer this question as well, but then I'd love to just tack on the next one as well and have you run right into how is it that Bayot, so how are you creating pathways to stability? And then talk a little bit about this non-congregate shelter and how it's been a solution offering in the overall homelessness response strategy in Denver from your perspective.
Absolutely. Thank you again. It's so great to see so many, as we mentioned in the pre-show, so many women, right? Like doing it.
Yes,
Okay.
love it.
So as Cherish said, a big chunk of our support is from Bayot Industries. So Bayot is new to the game, right? So in the past, to just do a little brief, there's a huge history behind Bayot and the Denver facility, the Denver County areas. But real quickly, we originally started in workforce, right? And we worked with individuals with disabilities. So there's at least a 20 to 30 year span of support in the community for individuals with disabilities. Some of the 3 pillars that we hit that I explain to individuals when they come into our service department is that we're going to get you healthy, we're going to get you employment, and we're going to get you housed, right? So, and obviously that's a little bit different for every individual. There's, some baby steps, some big steps, some giant leaps, some small leaps, right? Again, we're new to the game, so we're not as big as Salvation Army or, CCH is another one over here, but we do have a lot of support from our parent company, Bayout Enterprises, and then we're also building those relationships within the community, right? Salvation Army, CCH, DHA, right? That's a huge one for us, the Housing Authority. And it's a constant evolving thing, right? Like it's constantly evolving because we are new. We have never done this before. It's never been done in Denver before. So we are also kind of the guinea pig. So some days are great and some days are a little bit more challenging, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think what I love about that is that we have that in common with our residents, right? We have that in common with our clients. Like, even though we slip up on some things, we get back up and we hit it again, right? So, and that creates that relationship that we have with our clients. I scream this all the time to anybody who will listen. I believe that the reason that we are so successful, because we are very successful at our site, is that we only have 54 individuals, right? We only have a small community. So we are able to give that one-on-one, whether it's in support or services or life skills or something simple as you're having a bad day, come sit and have a cup of coffee with me, right? There's always somebody there that's to support them. So that's really pivotal on how we're creating our pathways for stability at our particular site. Moving on in to the primary solution, non-congruent shelters, right? We've said it before, we'll say it again, right? COVID changed everything for that community, right? It increased that community. It changed who was in the community. It increased the barriers. It blew everything wide open, right? And as you stated in the beginning, Denver really hit it aggressively, right? Mayor Johnson, a lot of things can be said, right? But he went after it. He was ready, right? And he had a plan. And again, we're still looking and we're still learning and we're still evolving, right? So, but I believe, just like we've all said, that because of the pallet homes or the tiny homes, like our guys call them the tiny homes, it gives them lodging, right? It gives them a safe space. It gives them something that they haven't had in a very long time, right? So some of them it's been insanely long, right? And for others it's just a skip, right? So I think that that's the next stage that we're working on, right? So we've created this safe environment and then our teams come in and we get to the next step. And again, that's different for everybody else. But it's almost like a stepping stone. And that's how I kind of explain it to our residents and to my team, right? We work very hard in creating that safe environment. And it takes a couple days or it takes a couple weeks. I've seen residents that were there in the first day and they're like, how do I get out of here? What's going on? What's the next step, right? And then I have a group of individuals where we really have to push them to like, come see us. We've got support. We can help you, right? And then they finally come in and they're housed within a couple weeks, right? So it's a really cool thing to do. It's why I love my job. It's why Cherish loves her job. And more importantly, I think it has to come, we try to do it with compassion, with respect, and with grace, right? Like, I think that that's a really key thing that we focus on a lot at our site. We give a lot of grace and we give a lot of respect. And I think that that's the difference. Just real quick, I'm going to shoot out some numbers for you because that's what I do.
Love that.
For our particular site, we were gifted with 22 housing choice vouchers through DHA. We have, at this moment, they received the vouchers on April 22nd, and we have housed 18 out of those 22 recipients are in permanent housing.
Amazing.
Which is huge, right? Yay.
Yes, very good.
To date, the micro community has serviced 82 individuals, and 53 of those, 29 of those are current residents, right? So we are a little low, but we've done a couple things the last couple weeks. Every day is a challenge for us. Every day brings a new thing, right? So the last week's been a little difficult, but we're getting through it. So and we're just a constant flow, right? Like, we're in the spirit of new partnerships. We're building new partnerships with other groups within the community. They're hearing about our community. Like, how do we get them in there? What do we do, right? So we're partnering with new individuals that are bringing in transfers or new residents that are currently unhoused, and they come into our community because they've met this particular resource, right? We had one just last week that I hadn't even heard of that organization, right? So that's really great. If we keep on track of where we are at currently for the rest of this, heading into our third quarter and hitting those numbers, because right now it's only 22% house, right? But if we keep hitting those numbers, we'll be at 66% house. And as a girl from Nevada, that's a great number. Like, I'll take it. I'll take it all day long, right? So again, if you go back to the primary solution, and again, it's about safety, right? It's always about safety first for a lot of them. And then after that comes the services, right? Then we're able to do housing, employment, health, those three pillars that Bayard really focuses on.
Yeah, amazing. Amazing.
you.
Well, thank you, Diane. That's amazing. That's a great
Mhm.
rundown. And thank you for sharing some numbers. I think data is always great for people to hear.
Right,
So
absolutely. Yeah,
compelling.
we're constantly pulling
Yeah.
numbers.
Give us the data. Yeah. So, Kristen, I want to jump back to you because Diane brought up partnerships. I know you mentioned a lot of the partnerships that you guys had brokered in Santa Fe and how important that was. It was a large group of folks that you brought to the table. Can you talk a little bit about those partnerships and the collaborations, why they were essential, and how you got everyone to the table? I think that's a key success factor for cities to get as many stakeholders to the table as they can. So talk about how you did that.
Great. Yeah, I think I did talk about some of our organizational partnerships, and I'm seeing some questions come up in the Q&A as well regarding similar things. So maybe I'll address more of the community partnerships that we did. So here in Santa Fe, we do have a lived experience advisory board. That's what we call it. And that is made up of people who have lived experience with unsheltered homelessness. And so we really have worked with them in the past to gain an understanding and get their insight into best practices, how to implement these projects in the best way. So that's a really great partnership. And we're hoping to continue to have that be a important part of the network that we're in. We also have a process around meeting with communities. So before we put in this safe outdoor space, we met with neighbors in the area. It's a bit of more of an affluent neighborhood where this one is in. So we ended up meeting with the community members and creating a good neighbor agreement. And that's something that we will continue to implement as well, is good neighbor agreements with all of the communities that we go into with any future safe outdoor spaces that we implement. So those are two things that we think have really helped us. Community buy-in is so important. And so those have been really important partnerships as well. And I'd say also I mentioned earlier the volunteer network, the S3 volunteer network. They can be some really helpful on the ground advocates for, like, when we have something come to city council or other things like that. They can really advocate for these projects in a good way and help educate their community members about the importance of addressing homelessness and supporting our unsheltered neighbors.
Great.
And another great partnership is with the Christ Lutheran Church, which is the site where our safe outdoor space is. They were generous in fulfilling their mission by supporting their unsheltered neighbors and housing the safe outdoor space. And it's been really great to partner with them and see how some of their mission can be fulfilled in that way. And we're searching to see if there's any possibility for more partnerships along those lines, because it has been really great. So thinking of other churches or nonprofits in our community who might be willing to step up in that way as well to address unsheltered homelessness in our community. And then I've already talked about the S3 group that we're part of. And then we've also worked with the Community Investment Alliance, which is actually based and has done work in Denver. So we've been really excited to learn from Kathleen over there as well. And shout out to Denver in general. Really great city to follow their model. So
yeah. Very cool. Well, thank you, Kristen. That's super helpful. And I love the faith-based partnership approach. I mean, I think we work with a lot of cities across North America, and wherever there's faith-based partnership approach, there's easier access to land use. There's really beautiful, compassionate people who want to be helpful and volunteer. I mean, it's a great resource. And so if you're listening in and you're looking for the right partners, faith-based groups, community-based groups, real estate developers, architects, general contractors, those folks too, great partners to have at the table as you're thinking about creative housing solutions and strategies. But the part I loved the most, because it's what I'm most passionate about, is that you have a lived experience advisory board. Thank you for doing that. we cannot stress enough how important it is to bring folks with lived experience to the table. So Cherish, I'm going to jump to you now. Would love to hear from you about how Bayard engages folks with lived experience and why that's been so essential to building this cohesive strategy in Denver. What part have folks with lived experience played from your perspective?
I feel that people with lived experience, they've lived it themselves, right? They're humans, they've lived it. The decisions that they make impact their lives. And we are here to basically support them, right? We definitely go to them on their opinion, how they feel about things. We think about that kind of stuff when we're implementing things, but we are here to support them.
Great. Amazing. Diane, thoughts about lived experience engagement from your perspective as well? What role has that played and how important has that been in the success in Denver?
I think that lived experience is always going to be, it's like the secret handshake, right? Like they're going to be more apt to listen to individuals that they know have experienced the same situation or type of environment as they had, right? But having said that, the other half I want to show about that and point out that I think is also very important and that Bayard is very good at is that we also check in with those individuals that are having those conversations. So you have an individual who has lived experience, right? They have past trauma, they have past behavioral patterns, right? All of that. They've lived that environment and they've been in it. But I always make sure that they're okay, right? If there's a trauma, we're really big on trauma informed, right? We have a great support and training system at Bayard. All of us go through very in-depth training with a particular man. Mitty, we all love Mr. Mitty. He's great. And he helps us with that. The other half of that is Bayard also provides mental and health support to not only our employees, but also to just walk-ins. We have a clinic where they can walk in and get 6 free sessions. There's a mental health providers on staff. We're really big on trying to, if there's a resident that's having a bad day, we move them in that way. We're very good about having mental health and substance abuse peer specialists come to the community weekly. We weekly have health providers that come to the community. We're really big on giving them that core group, right? So my point was that as good as lived experiences, we need to make sure that we're also checking in on that individual as well, right? Because it could be a trigger or it could be something that puts them back into a bad headspace. So we're very careful about making sure that those individuals at the community that work for us, right? Whether it's projects or programs, if they do become triggered, then we have a solution for them, right? Because we're all very human. And some days somebody says something and it just hits you wrong, right? Whether or not you've had lived experience or not, right? That's the side that a lot of people, I think, tend to not forget about, but don't always necessarily point out when it comes to services. So that's something that we do very well. And I'm proud of that. So.
Yeah, as you should be. That's great. Thank you for going into that. And I think the lived experience piece is so critical for building trust with the population. And I think if you're a participant, you're listening in right now and you're like, I'm not sure if we do this in our community or how to start it in our community, please reach out, ask Palette, we'll help you. I'm sure these lovely ladies would be happy to help you as well to build a really meaningful connection to your lived experience population. I cannot stress enough how important this is in the big picture. It's more important than what kind of structures you put up. It's more important than the services you provide. It is the most important thing you will do. So if you're not sure how to do it, or if you're not sure if you're doing it well in a meaningful way, please reach out. We're happy to help you. So we've talked about some really awesome, fun things and all the great progress we're making, but I think it's good for the group that's here listening for us to be honest about some of the challenges and hard parts of this too. I think we all can agree this is not a rosy picture all the time. It's not easy work to do. It's very difficult, very complicated. So Kristen, I want to jump back to you. Can you share a little bit about some of the challenges and different things that you've faced in Santa Fe? Be as honest as you want to be and you're willing to be, and then kind of what you did to navigate those and mitigate those challenges.
Great. I would say that one challenge that we're definitely looking at in our community is that with everything going on with the fentanyl crisis, our existing systems of support are not sufficient to address that and what's going on. Our congregate shelter is really trying to look at how we can navigate this new landscape in a new and more a new way that meets the demands of the fentanyl crisis. So that's definitely something that we're looking at. And then, you know, kind of in some ways contingent with that is public perception and receiving public support. I think continuing to remind people about the importance of addressing homelessness in our community and, you know, that we're all, or at least most of us, are 3 paychecks away from being in a similar situation. And that it's the responsibility of everybody in our society to step up. I think sometimes there can be a lot of NIMBYism and a lot of reticence to address this problem as a community, or so continuing to have those, build those relationships and have those conversations is always a challenge. And those are the main things that, you know, are coming up in our community right now that we're all trying to figure out together as a community how to address, right? So, and it's a pretty brief answer, but
No, that's great. Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I think those are two, you mentioned the two that stood out that I'll highlight is the fentanyl crisis and then public support and education. I think those are two really high level issues that every community is dealing with, right? I mean, the general public does not understand the issue very well, or if they do, they might have a little bit of compassion fatigue now because the crisis continues to grow. That can be such a challenge. Excuse me. And then the substance use issue. I mean, I'm seeing chat in the chat box and in the Q&A questions and comments popping up about challenges around substance use. I think as a nation, we have not openly acknowledged enough the interconnectivity of substance use disorder and homelessness. And often there's the misperception that people who are homeless were first addicted, and it's usually the other way around. And if you can imagine trying to spend the night outside and trying to survive on the streets, you might also end up using a substance in order to stay awake so that you're not taken advantage of. You might end up trying to numb the problem, right? Or do whatever needs to be done. And so often, if we can prevent the homelessness, we can prevent the substance use. But those that are already out there are already addicted, and we have to do something to address that. And we have to start talking about it more openly. So I'll get off my soapbox about that. Diane, Cherish, I want to jump to you guys. Talk about some of the challenges in Denver, or even just at your site that you manage. Talk about kind of the barriers you're bumping up against and how you get around those. Go ahead.
I think that you hit the nail on the head, right? I think the biggest challenge that we're facing currently, right? So because we're new and this is all a new, we're learning every day, right? There's never a day that we're not challenged with something, good, bad, or ugly, right? Like it's just the community that we have and that we live in, right? But ultimately, I think the biggest lesson is that we're trying to do it together, right? Like you said, about creating those relationships. We have a very open and honest forum, Cherish and I, my staff and her staff, we're learning how to intermingle and how we can best take this person to fit in here and that person to fit in there, right? So we currently, as you stated, it absolutely 100% needs to be talked about more. And we are directed to use harm reduction. But what is harm reduction, right? Where is the line with harm reduction where it's harm reduction versus coddling or supporting, or, you know, I know there's the word I'm thinking of, but it's flew out my head. So
enabling. It's enabling.
yes, there it is, right? Where is the
Yes.
difference? So we're really focusing on a team recently
Mhm.
about getting that resource. We're looking for that resource. We're looking for that training, because every time we open that door, right, it's heartbreaking. We
Mhm.
do see it. There is open usage, right? And we try to combat that, but where's the, you know, the lines? It's a very precarious balance currently, right? Like you said, who's to say that I wouldn't do what any of these individuals are doing to survive? And that's the big key piece too, right? Zero judgment. We come from a zero judgment place. There is with compassion and understanding, and that's why we have good numbers. That's why we have individuals that want the change, that take our support, right?
Yeah.
I read an amazing book, right? And it's called When We Walk By. I'm just going to plug it, right? So amazing book that pointed
I
out
literally have it on my desk right now. How funny.
that popped out, right? And I had my whole team is working on this book, right? And we're learning. I knew, again, I'm very new to this industry, and I knew from the jump that I was going to want to try the mama bear everybody. Like, that's just my personality. I think as services, we're just that personality, right? Like, what do you need? How can you help? But the thing that I teach my group and what I try to expand on is that we are not here to judge them or tell them what they should be doing. We are here to help them get to a place to what they want to be doing and give them the opportunity to be where they want to be. Because I can guarantee if you ask every individual in our community, they don't want to be there. They're grateful for it, but they want something more. And some of them are just stuck. So that's where we come in. That's where Cherish and I are incredibly passionate about it, right? We're proud of the relationships that we built with our residents. We are the first ones to raise the roof about their successes, but we're also the first ones to be like, what do we do, right? How do we figure this out? How do we make this better for them, right? So I think, and that's the key for me, right? Like you said, it's about talking about it more, about offering more information for those that do know or are learned and understand and educated in harm reduction. Or just in substance abuse, period, right? We do have a great group that comes to us. They are substance abuse supporters and peer specialists, and those are great, right? That's the additional key piece. We have the mental health piece. Still working on the mental health piece. We all know that the mental health is a whole nother crisis that we could do another forum on, right?
Yes.
And not just in our community, right? Like the lack of it everywhere, right?
Yep.
So again, I just keep going back to the same three things, right? Grace, compassion, and respect. And I think if you lead with those and any of the problems that are coming into the community, right? And any of the problems that pop up in the community, that it's going to be more successful if you lead from there, right? We don't lead with discipline. Obviously, there's discipline at some point, right? And it's Cherish and I hate it. It's the worst part of our job, right?
But it's
But
part of it.
it is necessary though, because at some point, right? Because we are trying to teach these individuals how to be in society again, right? Like some of them, we have residents who are illiterate and have been unhoused for 20 plus years, right? We have residents who had a family member died during COVID and he had to drop out of college, right? Like we have such a big array of individuals, but the key part is that they do want support and they do want help. So we just work very hard to try to find it for them.
Yeah.
That's my soapbox. That's my
No,
soapbox.
that's great. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I think one small thing I'll add to what you said is that it's a very unpopular thing to say that some people are not housing ready. They're not.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
People don't like it when we say that, but it is the
Mhm.
truth. And if you put someone who is heavily addicted and struggling with a mental health challenge in an apartment, they will use substances until they die. And you are committing them to death, and that does not help anybody. And so getting people into shelter with services is a more compassionate approach before you move them into housing where they may not have access to those services.
Absolutely. Anybody who's ever swung at us about rapid rehousing, I always say, convince me that you have a better solution than what I have right here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes they do and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's all kinds of good ideas out there.
Right?
We have to consider all of them. So I want to move to Q&A, but before I do, Cherish, really quickly, any thoughts on the challenges that you have seen and barriers and how you've gotten around them?
As Kristen said, and as we were talking about, right? Substance abuse is a big thing. And then mental health, like we've got some resources that are coming in for substance abuse and mental health, but we could definitely use more, right? And we're working with the city, to get more resources for that. Another challenge that we've had is we've got a boarded up hotel next door. We've got a bunch of encampments around us, right? We are once again working with the city and county. We have really good relationships with the police department, District 5 that we work with. But just the hotel and the encampments around us has kind of it's brought in more people. And as they close down encampments, more kind of trail our way. So that has definitely been a challenge too, with not only our community, but the neighbors and the businesses around us too.
Yeah, great. That's great. Thank you so much. So we have so many questions to answer. We're not going to have enough time. So I want to tell everyone who's joined, this has been a great conversation. Lots of cool stuff that's prompted questions from all of you. We promise we will provide you answers to all of these. We're all going to meet right after this, get you answers and send them out to you in writing. We'll also be sending out a recording of this webinar so you can have it handy. But we'll try to get a few of these out, but I'm not going to get to all of them, so I'm sorry. I want to start with one that I think is really important and is probably on the minds of most folks. And Kristen, you alluded to it, so I'll start with you. It's around outreach and engagement. So how is it that you prepared neighbors? You mentioned that you did some community outreach. Can you talk a little more about preparing neighbors for housing solutions like this, for grouping people? Like, what did that look like and what NIMBYism tactics did you use?
Great, and that's something that we're thinking about quite a lot right now as we're hoping to create more safe outdoor spaces in our community. So we currently have a call out for more sites, as I mentioned earlier. So we've done some media outreach and have done a lot of coverage on our safe outdoor space that we currently have, which is just such a great place, and people are, finding stability. There's a lot of really amazing experiences that people are having there, including someone who was unsheltered for like 20 years and is now stabilizing in our space.
Amazing.
So just continuing to highlight those really incredible things that are happening in our community and the really good work that our service provider LifeLink is doing. So just really highlighting that good work. And then because there's quite a lot of interest in homelessness in our community right now, there are lots of opportunities. So we're looking at, presenting to the S3 volunteer group. We'll be doing that. I've just received an email yesterday about going to a community meeting. So doing those small, like on the ground grassroots things, as well as I think we're planning on doing more like bigger community type meetings with facilitators and discussions on our strategies and how we can move forward with creating more opportunities for shelter.
Great.
So that's a pretty quick kind of like overarching answer. So yeah.
Awesome. No, that's great. Thank you. And on the NIMBYism issue, Palette has a collection of resources we can share as well that we've seen, some best practices we've seen from the 86 plus cities that we've partnered with, and happy to share those openly so folks can try them. The next section of questions, there's a lot of questions around this, so I'm going to try to kind of summarize them and then we'll break down the detail later. But this one is more for Cherish and Diane around site management and services. So question is, what is the selection criteria of who can live in your village? And are there any time limits for occupancy? Can you talk about that a little bit?
The selection process is completely out of our hands, right? So Bayad has partnershiped with the city. We obviously had contract, it's contractual. We have a contract for a year currently with renewal for another year at our current location. So everything the city has a very, very extensive, because Mayor Johnson's All in Mile High initiative was very aggressive, as you stated earlier. He has a whole team and panelist of people that just do outreach, right? So, and that's why we successfully got 1,000 people off the streets by the first of the year, right? Within that 6-month span that you talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's just kind of the trickle effect, right? I'm going to be very blunt, and this is a swing, but the homelessness issue is no longer in downtown Denver, but it's just spread out, right? As Cherish just stated, we have encampments that popped up around us. Those are the individuals that didn't make it on the bus and to the facility on the 31st of December, right? So because of our successes, the individuals, once they get healthy and better and focused, right, they start to talk and they tell their friends, and then their friends want in. I get at least 2 to 3 phone calls a day or text messages about an individual that wants to get into the program, and I just refer them to host, right? Again, I will state over and over, we're still learning. We don't have a solution for this yet. We don't know what the solution is yet, but we're working towards it, and we're aware of it, and the city is aware of it because of panels like this and open discussions that we have with host. Both Cherish and I have a very, very amazing group of individuals that do our case conferencing from the city, and they hear us and they try to solve all of our issues as much as they possibly can, right? And we got them all the time. We're always swinging at them, right? We have the most patient man in the world. He's so great with us. But I think that I've seen a lot of questions about the funding, right? Denver's been very, very, we're very grateful that we have the funding that we have. We're using our funding to the best of our abilities, right? We're doing what we think is going to help these people, how we think it's going to help them. But there's also other resources. Our funding only goes so far. I can tell you that there's some really great other nonprofits popping up in the Denver area because we do have some focus on the unhoused situation. There is a big spotlight on it, right? Both positive and negative. There's new nonprofits that are popping up. I currently have a relationship with one where she provides a whole house worth of furniture to individuals who have been housed for X amount of dollars, for a very small amount, right? In the big scheme of things. So that's been a really big one for us over at the micro community.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that is the fact that, you know, we're working with the government, right? So sometimes the things that we need, Cherish is currently dealing with this, are the things that we truly need. Now that we're a year in, they're like, oh, well, you're good. And we're like, but we're not, but we're not. So it's that constant revolving door of nonprofit, right? We're constantly, we get this big one, and then we're like, oh, that's okay. So we need the X, Y, and Z onto A, B, and C, right? And again, it's really exciting to be a part of that. But the funding sources, again, a lot of the funding sources we currently, for Cherish and I, our funding is through our contractual agreement with the city.
Yeah.
And through Bayod. So that's where we've been incredibly lucky. But again, we have to still keep looking for other resources to fill in the holes, right? The little holes that are leaking out. So, but together, we're all going to figure it out, hopefully.
Yeah, that's great. And I thank you for tackling the funding question. That's always a big one. And
Yeah,
there
it's a
are
big
a lot
one.
of questions about funding.
Yeah,
And so
exactly,
thanks for
right?
noticing that. But I think an important point about that is that these types of issues and the trauma-informed care that's required to resolve these solutions requires sustainable funding and investment, right? And the more we can rehabilitate people and move them towards self-sufficiency, the less you need to continue that funding. So really working people, connecting them with services is the key, right? We at Pallet, we say that all the time. We provide a tool that people can live in to stabilize, but the magic of these sites is you guys, is the service providers and the city officials that are working with folks to get them back integrated into community. That's going to ultimately end this need for funding, is to get people reintegrated, right? So it's really important. But in order for us to get there, you have to fund it. And you're funding it either way, whether through extra law enforcement, uncompensated care models. You are paying for services for these folks either way. Please pay for them in a managed environment for folks who are rehabilitating people. That is more sustainable. Kristen, I want to jump back to you on a really interesting question that I think, you know, we hear it a lot, and Diane and Cherish, you probably have an answer to this too, but a question that comes up a lot is partnerships around throughput. So how is it that you're moving people from the micro community sites into permanent housing? What do those partnerships look like, and how do you obtain them?
Great. Yeah. I think it's really important that we remember that everybody needs a unique solution.
Yes.
Not everyone is the same, and not any solution is going to be right for everyone. So as we're talking about compassion and looking at people through a trauma-informed lens, that's also an important part of the conversation. So for some people, one format might look better than others. So while our safe outdoor space, of course, is focused on placing people into permanent housing, there's also the understanding that people might need to stay a little bit longer to stabilize, that some people might take some time to move through. And that's great because people are healing. And we need to look at this as an individual and trauma-informed lens as we're looking at solutions. However, our on-site service provider, our case managers, is a nonprofit who has worked in this field and has a great reputation, LifeLink. And they also are able to, part of what they do is help people get to a place where they're ready to navigate into permanent housing. So they're helping with all kinds of things, helping them follow through on appointments, helping them get documents, helping them, again, to stabilize, helping them find life skills and build life skills. So there's all kinds of things that go into that, and those case managers are there every day helping them through that. Another thing that we're looking at in Santa Fe is that we are really having a low supply of permanent housing. So it can take people a really long time to, even if they have a voucher, get placed somewhere. So that's another part of what we're looking at, is this is a solution that, you know, in our non-congregate shelter, we heard someone took like a year to get placed. So that's something that we're also looking at as our community, but also understanding that as long as people are able to show up to their case managers and show up to doing the work of getting with the program, so to
Mhm.
speak.
Yep.
Everyone's an individual and everyone is dealing with their own trauma and their own situation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Kristen. Super helpful. And I know for Diane and Cherish, I know you guys have some awesome partners in Denver too, one of which I'm a huge fan of. And I cannot say enough good things about them as Housing Connector. And I don't know if they've worked with people in your community, but they've worked with folks in our community here. They actually provide services to our employees here at Pallet who are looking for housing. What they do is they connect folks in need to market rate apartments, to landlords. They make the connection. They help landlords. They help subsidize the risk for those landlords. So if you haven't heard of Housing Connector or you have a like program in your community, please leverage them. It's such an amazing program doing phenomenal work. And if you want to get connected with them for your city, reach out to us. We'll get you connected. But Diane, Cherish, quickly, do you want to talk about that partnership and getting people placed into permanent housing? What does that look like in Denver?
Currently, our looks like we were, so with the Mile High All In initiative, one of the parts of it was that for the across the board for all of the sites, there were 100 housing choice vouchers that were given, right? That were allotted. I don't know exactly how that partnership was made. That's way above my pay grade, right? So I'm not sure where that came from, but that's where it came from. And then at that point, my team went through and filtered through, right? Did the application process, did the housing process, the voucher, and now we're currently almost finished with our 22, right? So, and probably at about the 12th, the 8th person I housed, I thought, what about all my other clients, right? What about all of our other clients? Why? Because ultimately that comes in. Everybody should have an opportunity to have housing, right? It's a human right. But we all know that there is a crisis. There's a housing crisis, there's a food shortage, right? It's all happening, right? So what we've been able to do currently for our site is a big buzzword here in Denver is what they called rapid rehousing, right? It's where they are housing individuals from the street. And there's plus and minuses in both sides. But what we've been lucky enough to do is partnership with a group that is build a partnership with a group that is doing rapid rehousing. And what we've done is started a referral process. So I will take we as a collective whole will take 2 individuals from our site that are on step. I like to tell it the alphabet, right? Like some of them are on A, you're on G, and number 32 is on negative Q, right? Like it just, there's different levels, as Kristen was saying, right? We have to be individualized plans for each and every one of them. But there is a shortage of housing here. There is the fair market value, but Denver has also is putting those things into place. They are cognitive of it. They are recognizing it. The government, and as you said, like there's also backlash from all of it, and I understand all sides of it. We all understand all sides of it. But the focus on housing first has opened up a door for our community that allows at least 2. We have 2 individuals that we put up for referral for that rapid rehousing. Now it's not essentially rapid rehousing because they have had a little bit of a time within our community to settle and kind of feel safe and feel healthy and get back in to their site where they are ready. And that's something that we're partnering with that group currently. That's what we're doing. Again, that's not what everybody does. Also, there's the lottery that happens through the housing authorities. Know your housing authorities. Know their lotteries when their times are coming. Go down and meet your housing authority members. Walk in. I was told 6 months ago, go in with a box of donuts and coffee and walk around until you find somebody that's going to sit down and speak with you, right? That's the biggest thing that I could say. Start trying to find the connections because there are the resources and there are people that want to help get these people housed. You just have to look for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Diane. That's so helpful. I know we're out of time and everybody probably has other things they have to run to, but I could have this conversation with you guys for hours because this is such a big deal and so many complex issues. But thank you all for joining us today. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all your questions. As I mentioned, we're going to meet right now, all of us, and draft answers to them. We're going to send them out to you in writing along with a copy of this recording. There is a QR code here and an email. If you didn't get to ask a question, please send it. we'll make sure that the panelists get questions that you funnel through. But Cherish, Kristen, Diane, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the very important work that you are doing in your cities to help the most vulnerable on your streets. And thank you all of us for joining us today. Have a great day.